Oh, Prinny, where are you? What's this note here?
Dear Mr. Shower, for your safety, I've entrapped the demon who resides in this room. Attached is the tube in which he is sealed. If you would like further information, please feel free to find me. Regards, Raido Kusunoha the 14th.
What? How do I free him? I'll admit, he is a bit of a safety concern, but that doesn't give anyone the right to take away my Prinny. Why, I'll give him a piece of my mind right after this intro. Welcome back to Samsungintheshower's 2025 Year in Review Part 3! Let's make this intro quick so I can restore Prinny to his former self. This video will include games that I beat for the first time from July 1st to September 30th. Like always, games will be ranked on an ordered tier list, which we started in the previous parts. While it isn't necessary, watching parts 1 and 2 will heighten your enjoyment of this video. With that out of the way, I'm coming for you, Prinny! I suppose we should learn more about this Raido by playing his game. And what a game it is! Raido Remastered: The Mystery of the Soulless Army is a remaster of the third game in the Devil Summoner series, which I've never played, so the improvements over the original are lost on me. This game, along with the entire Devil Summoner series, is part of the SMT series, meaning that throughout the adventure, we collect and strengthen demons. What differs is its gameplay, because unlike most SMT games, this one is an action RPG, which is something I wasn't expecting when I picked up this game. That isn't to say the game is worse because of it, the gameplay is a lot of fun, both exploration and battles. I love the way the game does puzzles, having you work together with demons and their skills to navigate not just the overworld but the dark world as well. It can feel a little annoying not having the right skill necessary for progression, but I liked it regardless. It gave a reason to have a large number of demons in my party at any one time instead of a handful of useful ones and a bunch of filler spots. You can have some demons for combat and some for investigations. Speaking of combat, it's enjoyable. It is a bit basic, playing like most ARPGs, however, the SMT elements add a lot, having enemies get stunned for hitting their weaknesses, buffs and debuffs having a strong effect, and all that SMT goodness. The game isn't a cakewalk either. Enemy attacks do large amounts of damage with fair but hard to avoid attack patterns. At least for the bosses. Regular enemies are a bit of a joke like most SMT games, but battles are so quick that I largely don't mind. Plus, the game doesn't use a random encounter system, so I can avoid battles if I choose. Visually, the game has definitely been upgraded. It just looks like everything has been cleaned up, which is what a remaster should do. In saying that, though, it makes these human models look off. These models were not meant to be this clean. It is something I got used to and grew to like as a stylistic choice, but they look a little gross to me. Outside of that, pre-rendered cutscenes have been updated and are now widescreen, which shouldn't be a boom, but considering SMT3 Remaster didn't do it, I thought it would at least be worth mentioning. The last thing I want to talk about presentation-wise is the music, because my god is this soundtrack good. Sure, it feels like the same motif in a lot of songs over and over, but that motif is fire. Even the songs without it stand strongly amongst the rest of the soundtrack. To summarize, the presentation both visually and musically is fantastic, much like the story. This game has a brilliant story that kept me engaged at every twist and turn. I never like delving into the story too heavily in these videos, as I don't want to spoil it for people who are interested by my video, but I will say that I really connected to this story. I found it weirdly relatable to some issues we currently have. Part of the reason I don't spoil stuff, like I mentioned earlier, is because it gives you a chance to be surprised by this story. And I really want people who do engage with this game in future to be surprised by this story, because in my opinion it's really good. Just a solid story overall. In conclusion, Rido Remastered is great in every regard. Presentation, gameplay, and story have close to no flaws, and any flaws present are minor. Rido Remastered is an excellent example of what a remaster should do. Clean up the presentation, remove any annoyances from the original, and clear up any misunderstandings in the story. And for that, it gets an S tier. Alright, Rido, show yourself!
I'll take it from here. I am Goto, and this is Rido.
A talking cat?
Didn't you play any of our games? Of course I'm a talking cat. Regardless, Yatagarasu is in desperate need for the Devil Summoners abroad, and so we lured you out here in hopes that you would become one.
Yatagarasu? Who are they? And why would I even want to be a Devil Summoner? All the SMT games have it in Japan. What's even the point?
Again, you really should have played our game for this information.
I didn't have time to explain it, okay? It's just, I'm asking for the audience's sake, since it's coming out of left field for them.
Well, I suppose that makes sense. Yatagarasu is an organization for Devil Summoners, for the viewers at home. As for why you would want to become a Devil Summoner, doing so would allow you to summon your friend in that tube there. Lastly, I have no idea why they would want you to become a Devil Summoner. Maybe it's just to give you something to do for the video.
Wait, so I can free Prinny? I suppose there's no choice but to become a Devil Summoner! But what do I have to do?
It's simple. Just pass the trials by playing and reviewing games. You've already completed the first trial by doing the review of our game. Here, I'll give you the list of all the trials.
Okay, let's see. Trials of Detectives? So that's Rido's trial, huh? Trial of the Azure Dragon, Trial of the Pit, Trial of a Revisit to a Lost Land, Trial of the Distant Future, Trial of the Dream Traveler, and lastly, Trial of the Up and Coming. That's a lot to cover in just one video. Type your guesses for what game each trial represents. While you do that, I should get going. It's gonna be a long video, so up now is the Trial of the Azure Dragon. Okay, I know I'm cheating. This is just an enhanced package of all three Gumball games which I've played and loved. But it's technically a new game, so I'm counting it. To compromise, I'll try to be brief. Gumball Enhanced Trilogy is a package of all three mainline Gumball games with improvements in all areas. The first game received 4 new skills, an enhanced frame rate, and improved graphics among other enhancements. While the first game was never my favourite, I still believe it has the most interesting level design that showcases what Gumball can do best, even if it doesn't lend itself too well to score attack players. The game's story is engaging throughout and the ending is so... Gumball 2, much like the first, has visual and performance enhancements as well as new skills. Gumball 2 is my favourite game of all time. This level design is perfect, with engaging gimmicks that don't kill the pace of the game. The story, while flawed, has an incredible ending sequence that left me speechless my first go around. Furthermore, Gumball 2 adds a new character with a whole new playstyle in Copen. Both gameplay styles feel fully realized and are both complemented by the level design I talked about earlier. Both Gumball 1 and 2's Gumball, the character, not the game, control the same and like a dream. It's hard to explain, but the flow of the game just feels incredible, regardless of if it's your first run through or if you are going for that sweet S rank. As for Gumball 3, it only received performance enhancements. Gumball 3 abandons pretty much everything those games had and builds a new system for its gameplay to run on. The 3 main characters never really deviate from this system and all play almost identically. unlike the second game where Copen and Gunvolt have very different playstyles. That isn't to say it's bad. Honestly, it is the game I come back to the most, but I wish the characters had more identity in their gameplay. Outside of that, the story is also a tad underwhelming considering that they abandoned most of the plot threads from the first 2 games. Again, it isn't awful. After getting past the disappointment, I found myself liking the cast and the story, but I wish they had continued from where they left off with the first 2 games. While Gunvolt 3 isn't my favourite, it's still a phenomenal entry in the series, even if I have my gripes with it. That's a quick rundown on each game. One thing all the games have in common is their amazing presentation, from the fantastic pixel art to the jamming soundtrack. It's orgasmic, especially that soundtrack. The level themes are nice, but we all know I'm talking about that J-pop. It's so good, it has its own rhythm game. The J-pop further enhances the game feel, whether it's from raising your score to 1000 or resurrecting things to Anthem. It is always exhilarating to hear. The collection also includes a small selection of translated drama CDs from throughout the series, giving us new lore that most have likely never seen. It also adds to that Galkun connection I talked about last time. Overall, the series is highly worth playing. Each entry alone is worth an S tier on this list. They all have brilliant story, fluid and eccentric gameplay, and fantastic presentation, both in visuals and sound design. If alone they get an S tier, then together they get like an Omega S tier, which doesn't exist, so just regular S tier then? Sure. That's one more trial down. Next up, the Trial of the Pit. Although it sounds scary, I should probably get a better understanding of what's ahead with these next 2 games. Alright, so I was bored one day and made this video 2 games longer. Sue me. I thought it would be a good way to familiarize myself with the series before the next game, and I came out loving them. To be 100% clear, I cheated and used the rewind feature to beat these. Going back to these games, the screen feels incredibly screen crunched and it makes some obstacles feel unfair. I recognize that this is because of modern standards being so reliant on widescreen, so going back to that 16:4 aspect ratio feels so bad. The other reason I cheated was that I didn't want to dedicate more than a couple of days to these games. Still, despite all that, I had a ton of fun with them, thanks to the level design and fluid monkey controls. Even the presentation, the game has held up incredibly well, 3D rendered sprites and all, and don't even get me started on the music. Everyone knows these games have the soundtracks from the heavens. I don't have to say a lot, and I'm sure you've heard it all from the people who Luigi makes gassy. So let's just pop them both in A tier and move on with the main event. Donkey Kong Bonanza! The game everyone has been touting as the game of the year, or at least a contender, and who can blame them? With a fantastic movement system, gorgeous visuals, and incredible soundtrack, it's hard to fault this game. As soon as I got a control of this monkey, I fell in love with the movement. They made Donkey Kong feel so freeing to control while still adding the weight of a monkey of his size would have. The expansive movement options all feel so incredible, just like the gimmick of a completely destructible world. They utilize this gimmick very effectively by incorporating various terrain types to maintain a varied level design. Speaking of level designs, the levels themselves are visually stunning, just a treat for the eyes to behold, not to mention all the satisfying effects they added when smashing through all the terrain. The visual flair in all the animation goes a long way to put life into the game. In saying all this, there isn't anything new. All the levels feel like rehashed ideas of levels from Mario Odyssey. Obviously not everything is like that, but so much of the game's identity is ripped from that game. Beach level with an interesting set piece in the middle, jungle level with a poison add a level but food. This isn't a bad thing, and for the most part they do interesting things with the mechanics of this game to keep me entertained. However, it takes away from most of the identity this game has. There isn't anything I haven't seen before in this game, which is a shame because I really do like it. But the lack of originality is going to have me forget it by like this time next year. Thankfully, it still has an energetic soundtrack to fall back on, right? Well, the soundtrack isn't outright horrible. Most of the new compositions are more like the level design, forgettable. Not bad by any means, but nothing noteworthy outside of the vocal tracks. The ending theme is great, I love that, and the Bonanza themes are really catchy, outside of a certain theme from a slithery friend. I do like them, but not really enough to add to my playlist. The remixes are where the game really shines. I adore these remixes. They are all just so fantastic. Every last one of them. I was jamming out to it. Especially the one featuring the final boss. What a phenomenal way to close out the game. Before I conclude this section, I want to talk about the game's collectibles because honestly, why are they even in the game? I 100%ed this game, and it felt like a chore. Not because it isn't fun, I had a blast doing it until the final grind, but the collectibles feel completely pointless and are almost entirely unavoidable. The fossils are kinda just annoying to find because of the everything is destructible gimmick, leading to the stupidest hiding spots. Honestly, that gimmick hinders all the collectibles in this game. 90% of the banana gems I found, I smashed a wall, found it, and went, oh, there was a challenge I was supposed to do, and then left. The most fun I had with this game was speedrunning through the levels. Not that I've done a formal speedrun, but it's honestly the most fun I've had playing the level. Despite that, I still had a good time getting everything. It was more about the journey than the reward for me, and that journey is a great one. Overall, I really do like this game. The movement is fantastic, the level design is interesting, albeit a bit forgettable, and the jams of this game slap. While I have gripes, it all comes down to a lack of identity for the game, rather than anything it does to make the game unenjoyable, and so for that, it gets an S tier. The trial of the pit is complete. Next up, the trial of a revisit to a lost land. Let's see what it is. I really dug myself into a hole by playing so many platformers back to back. Alright, let's go down the checklist. The game feels good to play. The level design is unique and creative. The music is really good and catchy. The game looks incredible, especially with the Switch 2 upgrade. There's only so much I could say differently about each platformer, and while the Switch 2 edition of Kirby and the Forgotten Land is great, by God do I have nothing unique to say about it. The additional content is more Forgotten Land. It's great, but I can't make a full segment on it. To summarize, it's a solid platformer and another great entry in the Kirby series. A tier.
Can you really count that as a review?
Yes, I mean, you never said anything about the reviews being long. And besides, when you play one Kirby platformer, you kind of played them all. There isn't anything wrong with a game with little to say about it. I find it much more interesting to discuss really great games or really shit games, rather than games that are just good. You know?
I suppose that's true. Alright, I'll let it slide this time. On to the trial of the distant future.
Let's get this out of the way first. I really like the original Daemon X Machina. I thought it was a short but fun little game. The set pieces and the music really stood out to me. With a bit more refining, I thought the series could have really taken off. So what do? They shift the genre entirely, changing it to be an open world game. because we haven't got enough of those. Okay, to be completely fair, I think there are some aspects of Daemon X Machina Titanic Scorn's open world that works better than the original's mission-based structure. Building your mech, or arsenal as the game refers to it as, works a lot better here. Beating up enemies and taking loot from them is super satisfying and makes me want to engage in the combat, which is important in a game like this. Building your mech up is how the game incentivizes you to explore, and it works surprisingly well. Furthermore, there are plenty of side quests with branching story paths and the like to further incentivize you to scavenge the open world. It seems like there was a lot of thought put into it, rather than it just being a genre shift due to what's popular. In saying that, some of the aspects of such a world creep in here that I don't like. Lack of music, bland and flat looking areas, and long stretches of nothing, just to name a few. The lack of music is probably the thing that bothers me the most, especially since one of the most memorable things about the previous entry was its music. Even when this game does have music, it never lives up to the previous entry or is even memorable in its own right. None of it is bad, but I struggle to call it good either. It's just there. Even the visuals are kinda there. Graphically, the game is solid, however, it's brought down by most of the landscape being flat and boring, much like the story. I really wish I could care for the story. I really do, but it's such a nothing burger. I'm not saying that every game needs to have a great story, but with this much focus on it, I wish it were better. Things just happen and the character development is shallow. I found myself zoning out, going back to the cutscene I zoned out to and realizing I missed nothing. Maybe it's a me thing though. I suppose I can see people really liking this story, but to me, it was very boring. Maybe I would have been more engaged if the game had better performance, because my god does this game chug. Not as bad as Switch 1 Scarlet and Violet, but still, it's bad. Not to mention the multiple crashes I had. Honestly, it's kind of a miracle the game launched in such a state. Hell, one of the weapon descriptions wasn't in English? They just forgot to translate part of the game? And yet, despite that, I put in a solid amount of time. And that's because I like the combat, as well as looting at the enemies and exploring for gear. I think it's a lot of fun flying around and shooting and slashing guys and all that good stuff. Genuinely, it's the only thing that kept me going back. Without the combat, the game would have been an E tier, but it's getting a C tier. The trial of the distant future is down. We're in the home stretch now, just 2 more to go. Thank God. Up next, Trial of the Dream Traveler. Klonoa Phantasm Reverie series is a collection of the first 2 main series Klonoa games, I think. Honestly, I don't know too much about the series, and I didn't know too much going into this one. There aren't many entries in this series, if I can be honest. So many of them are spin-offs too. It's weird. There's like a whole beach volleyball side series. Anyway, because of how long the names are for these games, I always refer to them as Klonoa 1 and Klonoa 2, and that's how I'll refer to them here. That being said, there isn't a whole lot different between the two. Both feature 2.5D platforming elements, grabbing enemies with the short-ranged wind bullet and shooting them in different directions to solve puzzles along the way. It's a pretty simple loop, but they use the mechanics to the fullest. It's always super gratifying to complete puzzles too. If I had any gripes with the gameplay at all, it would be that walking feels a tad slow. It's not unbearable, mind you, but getting from point A to B can feel a tad slow at times. But for the most part, the games account for the slower speed of Klonoa by adding collectibles and obstacles along the way for you to look out for, so it works out in the game's favour. Overall, the game is fantastic. Klonoa feels great to control, and the mechanics kept my interest throughout the whole adventure.
much like the story, which is deceptively emotional. This is where the two games differ more, as the first game, it really is a pretty basic save the day type beat. It's not until the ending where a huge bombshell is dropped and you fall apart. Your heart will break into many, many tiny pieces. Up until that point, it's honestly not that special, but it's all necessary to make that ending so much greater. On the other hand, the second game has a lot of depressing undertones in its story. The main part of the story is going to the Four Kingdoms to obtain their MacGuffins to seal off the Fifth Kingdom. That isn't an easy task, as each kingdoms are facing their own struggles in which our group of heroes must deal with. It doesn't sound that deep when I put it like that, and it really isn't, but the message to me is that the feelings that each of the kingdoms represent are important. However, it's also important to consider moderation. There's a point where these emotions are self-destructive, even some of the positive emotions. It's honestly brilliant storytelling, and while that ending doesn't hit quite as hard as the first game, the overall story is phenomenal. That goes for the first game as well. In conclusion, the story is heart-wrenching and beautifully written. The gameplay is fun and engaging, and the presentation, while I didn't talk about it, is solid in its own right. I didn't talk about the presentation because to me, it isn't anything incredible. I wasn't blown away by the music or the visuals, however, by no means is it bad. I just genuinely have no thoughts about it. In saying all that, I think it's clear that both these games get the S tier. As short as they may be, they are very deserving of these spots.
We're almost there. Just one more game. So many genuinely peak games this time around. If you're watching this video, I guess you have some games that I recommend you play. Much like this next game with the final trial of the up-and-coming Kyukyu is a puzzle fighting rhythm game that blends the genres perfectly. Okay, the fighting part might be a bit of a stretch, but considering it's all 1v1s is kinda makes sense. And that's where my biggest gripe is, because as much as I adore this game, the lack of playstyles holds it back from its full potential. There are 3 different game modes: Story, Versus, and Duo-Ups. Versus is the main mode, where you'll play Puzzle Bubble to the tempo of a series of 50 plus songs. The song list is no slouch either, with songs from popular anime, J-pop, and Vocaloid, even Hololive. I've added a ton of songs from this track list to my personal playlist. It's that good. But dear Mr. Shower, you might be wondering, that song list might be good and all, but what the hell is a Puzzle Bubble? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I don't have a good way to transition into the actual gameplay. You've probably seen something similar to Puzzle Bubble before, but you shoot bubbles and match colors. A standard game of Kyukyu Beats features 3 colors, however more can be added with certain abilities, up to 5. Abilities? What the hell is that? Dear viewer, mind your language, and I'll explain. You see, before anything is selected, you must select a character, with original characters and even Hatsune Miku herself. Each of these characters have unique skills and passive abilities that shape the way you play. Whether you focus on disrupting your opponent or delivering big damage, it's all determined by who you play and what cheat codes you pick. Cheat codes are just another passive buff you can pick with your character. The best ones are just certain color power-ups. It depends on your character as to which one you want, but the standard is picked. Putting all that aside, how the hell do you even do damage? Well, by matching 5 or more of the same color, you get a beat attack chance, which is essentially the rhythm game aspect. Press A at the right time and you'll do some damage and get a point. Knock your opponent out and you'll get a ton of bonus points. Being knocked out doesn't mean losing though. You get into a comeback mode briefly before resuming regular play. So how do you know who wins? Well, it's based on the amount of points you get. The winner is the one with the most points at the end of the song. That's the basic gist. Got it? Because I'm not explaining it anymore.
So yeah, that's versus mode. Story is essentially a versus match with certain conditions. It also does have a story about two up-and-coming streamers playing their favorite game. They also make music as well, but we follow their escapades as they become big stars on whatever platform they are trying to get big on. Honestly, the story isn't anything to write home about, but it works well to establish the cast as characters rather than just designs. To summarize, story mode, it's just more versus mode, designed to teach you the game and build the game's world and characters. Lastly, duo-ops is just a co-op mode. It has you work together to take down a single enemy. Knocking out the enemy will even end the song early, and you're rewarded more based on how quickly you knock out the enemy. The rewards you get here are used to buy new songs, cheats, and customization options for your profile. It's a good system and a nice break from everything else. The only issue with the mode is you have to play with someone. Whether it's online or locally, it has to be a real person, not a CPU. This isn't a huge issue, but having the only gameplay shakeup locked behind co-op is a frustrating restriction. Coming back to what I said at the start, I wish there was one more mode. A single player score attack mode is all the game really needs, and it would be a perfect package, because right now it's just one mark short. I really love this game. It's addicting. I could spend hours every day playing this game despite the lack of variety in modes. It's all presented beautifully with Japanese voice acting and the characters are cool. I do like this cast despite how simple the story is. Overall, while this game feels like it needs one more mode, even without it, in my eyes, it's an S tier game. Am I biased? Yes, but this is my list, so you can deal with it. Finally complete! Wowee! That was a lot to go over. It's almost like the last two games were late additions that I had because I was procrastinating the video.
Congratulations! You've completed all the trials. You are now ready to become a devil summoner. Now, all that's left is to complete the transformation.
Yippee! Okay, here we go! Transform! Wait, that's all? I changed character? Was this an elaborate ruse to detach myself from Grimnir and Granblue as a whole?
That was just a side effect. Realistically, it was just to add a storyline to the video. Anyway, Rhino, let's be off.
I guess all that's left is to summon Prinny. I summon thee, Prinny!
It's good to be back, dude. Are you ready to move on to part 3?
Part 3? Prinny, we just finished that. So I suppose it's time for next time! We will be finishing this year in review. The final part is upon us. What is the best and worst game of 2025? Find out in an impossible to miss finale. See you all there.